All right, well, if we're all set, hi everybody. My name is Carin Bloom and I am at Living Herstory on Instagram. Get that right out of the way. And this is 18th Century Happy Hour. So thank you so much for joining me today. Behind the camera today, I've got Andrew, who I'm hoping will come out in front of the camera every once in a while too. This is my drinking buddy and my barman and my cameraman. So grateful to have him with us. And you're joining me in my kitchen with all the historical glassware and all the bottles of all the things. So hopefully you will mix along. Hopefully you'll have something to drink. If not this afternoon, then on another day. Just give you a quick little introduction to myself. I am an archaeologist of the American Revolution, so I got into living history actually kind of late in my career. I've only been doing living history for 5 or 6 years, but I've been a public historian for 20. I started in archaeology, and I really like how material culture, how objects, how stuff and things have meaning, and how we can draw that meaning out, meaning that is assigned to it by its creator, by its owner, by its discarder, and then by those of us who find it later. So objects live all kinds of different lives, and that's why I was drawn to history, because I wanted to learn about all those different lives. And as I've gotten into living history, I've found that things like drinking culture, there are major aspects of life in the 18th century that we don't necessarily address when we are doing living history events. And so that got me thinking, what were people drinking back in the 18th century? And I did want to say that this is a really heavily studied subject. There's a lot written about how people ate and drank in the 18th century. You can find it all. I gave you guys at the back of your recipe book a list of sources, and it is not even remotely exhaustive. It's just a start. And there are a few books on there that have bibliographies of their own that you can really dive into. And can you hand me that one right there? This is one of my favorites, Forgotten Drinks of Colonial New England. I don't know if that's coming up on the screen. There we go. So Forgotten Drinks of Colonial New England has recipes, it has modern versions of drinks, but it also has information and history about how people drank and why. So this is a really heavily studied subject. The reason that I talk about it is because I would love to see more living history interpreters interpret it. People drank alcohol in the 18th century from pretty much the minute they woke up until pretty much the minute that they went to bed. And I know that when we go to events, a lot of sites aren't really so keen on having you drinking, especially not during the event, but especially not all day. Some sites are more lax about after the gates close and the people go home. But I still think that there's a way that we can interpret drinking culture in the 18th century without necessarily having a drink. So as you look at the drinks that I'm making today, start thinking about ways that we can perhaps interpret these without actually drinking alcohol, because I think it would be not very difficult to get the look of some of these beverages. And then you can talk about drinking culture, which was pretty darn huge. We're going to be talking about today distilled, brewed, fermented, and fortified. I'm really not going to talk a lot about how these beverages are created. If you want to talk about how gin is distilled, how cider is brewed, how wine is made, or how Madeira is fortified, we'll have to schedule another class, because going through how these beverages are made is a class each in and of itself. So this is going to be more like a social history. And with that, and I tried to put it a little chronologically as well. So I wanted to start with gin. Did everybody know that gin is a thing since way back, like almost 17th century? It's really an early 18th century drink. In fact, there was a gin craze in London, and it started about 1729. Turns out gin has been distilled in really cheap, really easily available ways for hundreds of years. It was hardly ever regulated, and in London, it got so bad, even the poor, the destitute, people that couldn't afford anything else for managing to buy and drink gin. And the drunkenness of the general populace was so noted by those who were writing down histories, by the gentry, that they started to make laws about it. And so there were 2 or 3 gin acts passed. The first one wasn't very successful. It was passed in 1729, and they tried to get people to stop distilling gin illegally. And they were so specific with the law about not allowing liquors that were distilled with juniper berries and a couple of other different ingredients, that people just made gin out of something else. So it didn't work out so well, but gin has been a cheap and available source of alcohol consumption for people for hundreds of years. And that absolutely carried over into the colonies. So what's the drink that everybody thinks of with gin? It's probably gin and tonic. When I was in college, I was drinking gin and tonics over a summer field school, actually, a theological field school. And one of my friends told me that I was ridiculous and that I drank like his grandfather. And I told him that his grandfather was the smartest man he probably knows. So gin and tonic, really easy. They didn't have tonic water back in the 18th century, but what they did have was quinine. Sometimes they mixed gin with quinine. Sometimes they mixed it with citrus juice. And that's probably where the remnant of the wedge of lime comes in. So for gin and tonic, it's an ounce or 2, and sorry, I don't have an 18th century version of this. They do sell them. They're these little teeny copper or brass cups. So you can get a little jigger, a couple ounce jigger. The gin that we're using today is Bull Rush, and I actually don't know too much about it. I'd actually like to call you in, Andrew, if you don't mind.
So Bull Rush is it's a local gin. It is distilled in Piedmont, South Carolina.
Local to us, South Carolina.
And it is it's a botanical gin. So it's going to be heavier on the other herbs and spices in with the juniper berry.
There you go. 2 ounces. And then, if you were in the 18th century, quinine or lime juice. But we're in the 21st century, thank goodness. Now, the recipe that I gave you says pour over ice. But I want you to know that pretty much everything that we're drinking today in the 18th century wouldn't have had ice. Not really a thing yet. So there you go, easy peasy in the Jamestown glass. If you like lime, certainly feel free to cut yourself a wedge. This is not hard. I promise, we're gonna get harder. You guys didn't just pay $15 to watch me make gin and tonic. Don't worry. You're absolutely encouraged, by the way, to ask questions anytime. I do have the chat window open. You can squeeze it in or not. So why quinine? Did I mention why? Oh, why quinine? Why quinine or citrus juice? Well, why make grog? We have to fend off the scurvy. So there you go. Gin and tonic, first 18th century drink. You can call it gin and quinine. Pretty much all of these first alcoholic drinks are like medicinal. And so if we're talking about staving off scurvy, you might have had a gin and tonic prescribed to you by a doctor. So cheers to that. Not bad. Here you go. That one's all yours, cameraman. It's gonna get really fun once he starts drinking that now. Can I get a towel off this thing? Yes, that's the one. Thank you. I splashed my gin, which is kind of a party foul. Right to begin with. Do we have anything? Tea is from Oliver Pluff and Company. Yeah! Tea! I love Oliver Pluff. Y'all should definitely drink Pluff. All right. Send it to Colonial. Tea rocks. There you go. All right. So that's mid 18th century. Gin does come over into the colonies. The gin craze wasn't really as bad here, and I really couldn't say why that is, except maybe population density in London in the mid 1700s. So gin makes its way over just like every other distilled liquor that's not whiskey, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And so gin and tonic or gin and quinine, is actually a perfectly historical thing to be drinking at an event. Another one that is mid-18th century and goes all the way through the 19th century is Rum Punch. Now, Rum Punch has a lot of different names. It's called a lot of different things in the world in the 18th century. It starts out being called shrub. So what you and I know as shrub today is probably more of a drinking vinegar. And drinking vinegar is near and dear to my heart. I make it, I drink it at events, I love it. Side note, it's a great mixer. And its drinking vinegar's name has changed over the years. It used to be called switchel. And before that, it was just called vinegar. So drinking vinegar became shrub. And before shrub denoted drinking vinegar, it denoted a kind of rum punch. And so I've got my punch bowl here. I found this, it's actually pretty darn good from an 18th century perspective. It's pretty decent in design. A blue and white punch bowl there. Hand painted porcelain. And so rum punch, or early 18th century shrub, is a big drink. It's meant to be a lot. So where's that? Can I have that measuring cup? Thank you. All right, so who's heard, we were talking about sea shanties a little bit ago. Has anybody heard Fathom the Bowl? Do you know Fathom the Bowl? Give me the punch ladle, I'll fathom the bowl. Right? So we're gonna start with a half a cup of lime juice. Now this recipe that I've given you is normally proprietary. And since I work in Middleton Place, I feel like I'm the proprietor. This recipe comes from the Journal of Thomas Middleton, who was the brother of Arthur Middleton, who signed the Declaration of Independence and lived here in Charleston, South Carolina. Thomas Middleton gives us this recipe: 1 of sour, 2 of sweet, 3 of strong, and 4 of weak. And so however you want to denote those things, whatever a part is for you, you just add. You just keep adding twice as much as you had before. So I'm going all out for you guys today. I'm actually squeezing enough limes to get a half a cup of lime juice. I guess I probably should have done this ahead of time, but I'm like, hey, we have an hour, right? So it's okay. But lime juice in the bottle is just fine. Lemon juice works perfectly well. Your sour is your citrus. And so when we talk about these early rum punches, these early shrubs, that's what we mean, citrus juice. Again, got to keep that scurvy away. There was no such thing as germ theory in the 18th century. That took a while to come into existence, but they had ideas about things. They had ideas about malaria and scurvy. And so they did their best, even if they didn't know why something worked, to cure with the cures that they knew. So, all right, we're almost there. In case you're wondering, squeezing 3 limes is about a half a cup of lime juice. All right, so 1 of sour, 2 of sweet. Now here my most excellent gravy boat, simple syrup. So a whole cup of simple syrup right in the bowl. 1 of sour, 2 of sweet. Now I use just regular granulated sugar, Domino's white refined sugar, but you can also use cane sugar, sugar in the raw, as long as you are dissolving equal parts sugar and water, you get a simple syrup. All right, 3 of strong. So it's going to be 1.5 cups of rum. Now rum is an interesting beast. Rum in the 18th century is cheap, it's available, but it's also in different types and kinds. We actually have trouble today finding a decent clear rum. You can find a lot of clear rum. Bacardi, Admiral Nelson. Cruzan here, which I happen to like okay, although the clear stuff is not what I normally go for. Finding clear rum that's actually the good sipping quality today is really hard. You might find a Mount Gay. Mount Gay is the second oldest distillery in the world. It's on the island of Barbados. In the 18th century, the most desirable rum was the clear stuff. This was what took the longest to distill and to refine. So if you could find a fine, clear, sipping rum, that was a big deal. Nowadays, what do we want? We want spice rums, we want dark rums, we want rums with deep flavor profiles and strange complexities. Tastes really change from the 18th century. So a cup and a half of clear rum. And again, this is not my particular favorite. I use clear rum as a mixer, so it's great here in Rum Punch or Early Shrub. So 3 parts strong and then 4 parts weak. So I'm going to ask Andrew to get me 2 cups of water, please, out of the faucet. So rum was invented on the island of Barbados, believe it or not, and it's a byproduct of sugarcane pressing. Sugarcane was being pressed to bring the colonists sugar and to bring them molasses. And early on, the byproduct was being thrown away until folks realized that when the byproduct fermented, it could then be distilled into a very nice grain alcohol. And so that's what they started doing. Right in there. All right. So if you have extra citrus, and by the way, I'm going to do my best to show you the bottle, show you the brands that we're using. We picked our favorite things. Where it was possible that our favorite things, mine and Andrew's, overlapped with 18th century things or 18th century-like things, that's what we went with. Cruzan is not that old. This is from St. Croix, and it's just not that old of a brand, but I like it. It's tasty. So I would happily use Cruzan rum in a rum punch anytime. We'll talk more about Mount Gay in a little bit. So here's our rum punch. If you have leftover limes, you can slice them and then float them in the bowl, but if you wouldn't mind picking up that camera there, it's just a light, refreshing, clear drink. And I'm going to put it here in my rummer. This glass is called a rummer. We find pieces of those little bits, those prunts they're called. Those are actually glass bonded onto the glass stem. This was a gift to me from St. Mary's City when I was a TA on an archaeological field school. This is a 17th century glass form that was meant to hold rum and rum drinks. So this is really what needs to be in here. And please forgive my punch ladle. If you weren't here much earlier, you didn't hear me lamenting to Kendall about the fact that I have this beautiful rum punch bowl now, and I don't have a ladle. So if anybody wants to direct me to a nice eBay page with a good punch ladle, I'm in the market for an 18th century punch ladle. They have these silver ornate bowls. They have long, thin, skinny, turned wooden handles. They're gorgeous. So I'm in the market. So here we go. Rum punch, early shrub, but an everlasting recipe from Thomas Middleton himself. So cheers. Make a delicious rum punch. There you go, darling. Has anybody tried that rum punch? You just did. Did you make it? Do you like it? Is it good? So again, if you're making this for a party, make it in a punch bowl. But I think that I tried to give you, oh, I totally didn't. I just told you to. Right, so you want to use ounces for your parts if you're just making it in one vessel. You're just making one serving. Please don't use half cups and cups. You will get a lot. I promise I will definitely make it next year. I'll bring the punch bowl. I'll have a ladle by then, I'm sure. All right, so I'm actually gonna ask if you wouldn't mind putting this off to the side for me, thanks. If you guys wanna ogle my punch bowl later on, we can certainly bring it back, no worries. Good stuff. That's delicious. Hey, look, along with rum, this is gonna sound really stupid, but along with rum, the thing that really makes a nice punch is an actually decent simple syrup. You can buy one in the store, but it's really not that hard to boil a cup of water with a cup of sugar in it. I actually did 1.5 cups to have some extra. Just make it yourself. It really drives up the flavor. It brings out the flavor of the lime, and it really masks the rum, which you might think is not what we want, but again, when it's clear rum, well, I'm biased, but when it's clear rum, I want to mask it. I just want to use it for the intoxication factor. So gin and rum are very old drinks, very old distilled drinks, and though gin doesn't really factor into a lot of mixed drinks that we see in the 18th century, rum definitely does. And actually, can I hand you a bunch of dead limes too? Sorry. We're gonna compost these babies because we're sustainable like that. Into the coffee can they go. Y'all, I'm really excited. We have a little garden out back for the first time in forever because all of our events got canceled. And our Cherokee squash flowered today, and we got field peas running all over the place, and we got tomatoes growing, and we're just so excited. So now we're on to the composting. Anyway, gin and rum are around. Rum in the colonies becomes the distilled beverage of choice. I sometimes wonder if a gin craze didn't happen here because rum was so available and so in demand. It just was ubiquitous. Got harder to find during the Revolution, but still something that was easily found even up into the backcountry. People think that whiskey was a thing from before the Revolution, and it wasn't. Rum was so easily accessible. It was on all the trade routes. It went across the mountains. It was in the frontier. Rum was everywhere. Rum was definitely king. And you're gonna see that because pretty much every other drink that we make except for sangaree is gonna have rum in it. And rum can be substituted out for other things, whiskey included and brandy, but rum definitely rules the roost in terms of distilled beverages in the 18th century. And being something of a pirate myself, I kind of like that. I'm here for it. So that's good stuff. Now the next one that we're gonna make is really easy. A lot of these are really easy, but if you're like me, you may be sort of a manual learner, and I definitely am. So I'm gonna take my stoneware vessel here, and we're gonna make a stone fence. I love apple cider. I love cider. I love cider. I love rum. I love cider. I love this drink. I love this drink. It's so simple, but it's great. So again, Mount Gay. Now this time we're gonna use this dark rum. This one is aged. If you can find Mount Gay in your liquor store, I heavily recommend the Black Barrel. There's actually one called Eclipse XO. If you are willing to pay a little bit more per bottle, get the Eclipse XO. But the Black Barrel is beautiful. I have a penchant for dark rums, spiced rums, rums with that distinctive spicy flavor. And so this is my drink of choice. Now I'm bringing back my jigger again, but I will tell you a secret. When we are together again at an 18th century event and I am pouring rum drinks, this is not my favorite measure. The little brass cup is not my favorite measure. My favorite measure is something called TLAR. Anybody TLAR things? It looks about right. So I eyeball 2 ounces. 2 ounces is never quite the same from drink to drink, but we'll do it right. A stone fence is 2 ounces of dark or spiced rum. Cover it up with cider as much as you want. Cider is not a distinctly American thing, but like a lot that Americans do, cider was made popular It's a populist drink here in the colonies. This one comes from Virginia. It's a nice little local cider that you should be able to find if you're mid-Atlantic or at least a little further north than we are. We have a total wine here, so we're a little bit spoiled in that respect. Stone fences are the drink of the American Revolution's beginnings. They say that Ethan Allen and the Green Mountain Boys, when they stopped at Remington's Tavern on their way to Fort Ticonderoga, they had just heard about the Battle of Lexington and Concord, and they decided that maybe they'd stop fighting the Yorkers for a little bit. Because, you know, New Yorkers, I'm from New York, it's fine. That's cool. Those Green Mountain Boys used to fight those Yorkers, and they figured that they may as well fight the British instead for a little while. So they went to Remington's Tavern in 1775. They spent all night drinking stone fences. And then they went to Fort Ty. And they were ready for a fight because a little bit of liquid courage never does anybody bad. And it turns out they didn't need the liquid courage because all they found was one sentry and he was asleep. So it was a completely peaceful takeover of Fort Ticonderoga in New York. And every time I drink a stone fence, which I love for the cider and for the rum, I toast Ethan Allen and the Green Mountain Boys. Stone fence. This is delightful. If you don't have cider and rum on hand in your kitchen on the normal, I really strongly urge you to do that because you can make all sorts of lovely combinations. You can throw some beer in there, you can throw some brandy or some whiskey in there, but your standard stone fence is a beautiful thing. Now that I've been talking and I let this boil down a little bit. I know it's hard to see. There's nothing much really to see. I wish we were together. I wish you could taste it. Now, this is a dry cider. I prefer it that way. But dry cider plus unsweetened rum can be a little bit of an acquired taste. So you can always throw some of your simple syrup that's left over into a stone fence to sweeten it up a little bit, or you can just get a sweet cider. Lots of sweet cider around. But this one, I can really taste the apple. I can really taste the rum. So that's why I prefer it. I'm keeping this one. I've been handing these off to Andrew, but I'm keeping this one. This is my favorite. Cider really took off in the colonies along with rum because it was one of the plants, apple trees were one of the plants that were brought over here, mostly with German colonists, but also with British ones, and they really took off, especially in the Northeast. By the time of the Revolution, the northern colonies were exporting cider not only back to England, but also down to the southern colonies here in South Carolina, in North Carolina, and in Georgia. So cider is definitely an American beverage, not invented here, but certainly created in all of its depth and variety here in the British colonies. So. Love cider. Cider gets a bad rap these days. It's just like anything else. If you drink the equivalent of, you know, Bud Light or Coors or Miller Lite, whatever, in the cider brand, then you're going to go to sleep with a headache. But if you get a good farmhouse cider, a good small batch cider from a local brewery, you should be okay. So, how's everybody doing there? I'm looking over here. What's the name on the cider? Having a stone bench right now, yay! Potter's Craft Cider is near where I grew up. Yeah, it's Potter's, sorry. Apparently my head is cut off in the video now. I don't know. Potter's Craft Cider. This is a farmhouse dry from Virginia. I don't know, I don't think it is, right? You can see me in there. Cool.
It's not cut off in that video. It might just be cut off a little bit on your side.
Over here?
Not really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I get over here, guys, I'm
right.
looking this way. I'm reading my chat window. Feeling a buzz already. Yeah. Good. Albemarle Cider Works. I haven't, Heidi. Where is that? Is that in Virginia also? Let me know if that's in Virginia also. All right, so cider Cider is immediately followed by beer. How's that beer on the stove doing, by the way? It's not boiling, is it? Good. All right. So cider, I remember at the beginning I said that people were drinking from sun up to sundown. That includes cider. Cider is traditionally a lower alcoholic content, so it was an easy breakfast drink. There was an even less alcoholic version of it from a second or third pressing that was called Ciderkin. And as you may guess from the name, Ciderkin was most often drunk by children. So even kids in the 18th century are drinking alcohol from a very early age, starting in the morning. They would also drink small beer. And so small beer is a lower alcohol content. There's not a whole lot around these days that counts as small beer. Yeah, I mean, most of your normal stuff, like I got this Munkle's 66 Bull Blonde. That would be a decent, probably brew. It's only 5% alcohol. So that's what we're looking at for small beer, between 4 and 6%. So again, if you're not wanting to drink some of those big name brands, find something from a local or a small craft distillery, brewery that is between 4 and 6%, and you're approaching small beer, and probably something lighter in color. The darker your ales, the less likely it is that you're approximating 18th century small beer. I also have a Chimay ale here. The Trappist monks in Belgium have been making beer for hundreds of years. So I really like Chimay, so I thought I would put a bottle of that out for you guys. But beer is the basis of the next one. Rattle-Skull is so named because it will most definitely rattle your skull. It has at least 2 different types of alcohol, unless you make it with 3. Your choice. Artist's choice. University has a brewery program now. That's cool. Can you major in beer brewing? That's nice. Charlottesville. Albemarle is in Charlottesville. You know, I might have tried it when I was at Montpelier last. A couple of years ago, I was excavating. I was doing archaeological excavation at Montpelier, this one. And I think somebody brought Albemarle now that you mention it. So, all right, so I'm gonna make a Rattle-Skull with dark beer, but it's your choice. You can use one of these small beers. I'm gonna use a nut brown ale here, so thank you. So, Sam Smith's Nut Brown Ale. This one is an old brewery in England. Now, probably if you go to England, they'll tell you that this stuff isn't necessarily the greatest, but I really like it, actually. This is one of my go-tos if I feel like I want to make a cocktail in the 18th century. This brewery was founded in 1758. I would classify this as a small beer because even though it's brown ale, it's only 5% alcohol. So you can find it, it's a fancy foil on the top, makes you feel fancy. So that's our topper. The way I wrote the recipe is with this rum again. And I said light or dark rum, your choice. I would pretty much always choose the dark rum if I'm not making a clear drink like a rum punch or shrub. So I'd probably use this one. But you can also use brandy. I'm so excited, you guys. I come from New York, but I grew up in Maryland. And one of my favorite breweries as I got older and I went to the University of Delaware is Dogfish Head. Dogfish Head Brewery. In fact, the flip is going to be made with Dogfish Head Palo Santo Marron. Dogfish Head I love because they've done research. They do historical brews and historically inspired brews. And just recently, Dogfish Head got into the distilling game. So there's a lot of Dogfish Head on our Baker's Rack liquor cabinet. They have rum, they have gin, so good. They have mixed drinks, Prohibition era. And these days, they are also making apple brandy. So this is Esprit Malade, apple brandy. Now, because those apple orchards have been so ubiquitous for so long in this country, cider isn't the only product of those. Fresh apples, of course, but apple brandy, apple jack, all of these different drinks would have been used in these cocktails. So you could go with an ounce of brandy and an ounce of rum. You could go with an ounce of brandy and an ounce of whiskey. Whatever you choose for your distilled alcohol, just make sure it adds up to about 2 ounces. I'm gonna go back here with the rum. Another couple ounces or another TLAR, depending on who you are. An ounce of fresh lime juice. So I'm definitely gonna TLAR that. I'm just gonna cut another wedge, a really big one. And squeeze it right in. The rest is brown ale. So if you can imagine whiskey plus rum or brandy, or hell, if you're really crazy, all three, topped off with a brown ale that may or may not count as small beer. Swish it all around and drink it down. Rattle-Skull is a very aptly named beverage. So I don't know if you can see it in the bottom there. I don't know if we can tilt. Yes, we have glass bottom tankards. Of course we do. That's crazy. And what's crazy about it is if you get really good ale and really good distilled liquors, this goes down so smoothly, so smoothly. Try that. I didn't even let you try the stone fence, did I? Here, you can taste it. You just have to give it back to me. What do you think about that Rattle-Skull?
That's pretty tasty.
That's pretty good, right? True story. I actually haven't made most of these beverages for Andrew, so he works pretty cheap. He works for drinks, which is pretty nice. So, all right, how's everybody doing? Great. TLAR is your new favorite measurement. Yeah, I love it. The nutmeg makes it special. You know what? You're right. Bonnie, thank you for keeping me on track. Thank you for keeping me on track. I totally forgot the most important part. Bring that right on back here. All right, so I actually went to the store and I looked for a whole nutmeg because I do in fact have a little nutmeg grater and I wanted to be all super cool and really 18th century. And gosh darn if it's difficult to find a nutmeg in the world. So ye old jar of McCormick's into ye old 18th century spice jar. Just throw a little in your hand there. Really, it doesn't take a lot. Just a little teeny bit there and dash it right in. If you drink nutmeg on your eggnog, I hate eggnog. If you drink nutmeg on your eggnog or any other kind of Christmassy drink, this will make sense to you. Swirl it around in there. Now, does anybody know why nutmeg appears in a lot of these recipes? Because it does. Not just the ones that I gave you, but a lot of these 18th century recipes. Oh yeah, that makes a difference. There you go. Just thinking of baby. Rattle-Skull is your new babe, yeah. Internationals, you know, that's because I looked, I really did look all over the grocery store, but I could have gone to other grocery stores and I confess I did not do it. They are, you can get them, you can get them from Townsend. I actually ordered some a while ago from a different company. They haven't come in yet. You can find them. You can grate nutmeg fresh. Nutmeg was a big deal because it was one of those spices that was super exotic and super popular in the 18th century, but it was also accessible. So one of the reasons why people were drinking alcohol from sunup to sundown. Remember, germ theory is not a thing yet. So it's not like the water is bad. We can't drink it. Maybe some places the water tasted bad, so they didn't want to drink it, but they didn't understand that there were germs and bacteria in water, and so it was bad for them to drink it. That's not really a thing, not until the 19th century. In the 18th century, people drank alcohol, cider, and small beer from the very beginning of their day because they could. This is conspicuous consumption. If somebody could afford a little bit of beer or a little bit of cider, they were going to buy it and they were going to drink it. Even the poorest folks. If you had a little pocket change, you could afford some brew. So people drank it because they could, not because they must. Think about that. That's kind of like, why do so many people spend $5 at Starbucks literally every day? Now, some folks aren't doing that, not every single day, but everybody goes to their local coffee shop now and again. It's because you can. Same thing with cider and beer. And same thing with nutmeg. You can get it, you're gonna put it on everything. You're gonna put it on your food dishes and you're gonna put it in your drinks. So, all right. How are we doing on time? 6:20? All right. Nutmeg, it's in everything. Eggnog, snickerdoodles, nutmeg, I put that shit on everything. That should be an 18th century motto for sure. Can we do a new like Salt Bay, but with nutmeg? Is that a thing? Make me a meme. Okay. All right. Okay. So flip. Flip. Oh, flip. I know a lot about flip. I really did just try it. I didn't taste it for the first time a while ago, but I know a lot about flip. Flip used to be so popular that entire lines of glassware were created just to hold flip. That delicate rummer that I showed you from the 17th century, it was sort of the next generation of that. A flip glass was shaped kind of like this, but it was a much, much, much finer glass. Usually, it was made out of Venetian glass, and they had decoration and designs to rival the most beautiful Venetian wine glasses that we've ever seen. Flip was a big deal. In the 18th century, a hot poker called a flip iron was heated on fire and then inserted into the beer to make it warm and frothy. It's a really nice trick, but it's really not necessary. So we have on the stove, we're doing the serves one version. So I do have two pictures here, but we're doing the serves one version. So I have that bottle of Palo Santo Marron that's been on the stove. It's meant to be heated until it foams, but do not boil it. So in one pitcher goes the beer. Great. In the other pitcher goes an egg, raw egg. Don't worry, it'll get cooked. The beer is hot, it's fine. Raw egg. And then what else? Guess what else? My best friend, dark rum. You can use light rum if you want, but why? You can get a little flavor here. Couple ounces of dark rum. And actually, I need something to look next to this. And then we need a teaspoon or two of sugar. Don't omit the sugar. Please don't omit the sugar. This is a weird flavor. It is a weird texture. It is absolutely made better by sugar. So don't omit the sugar. I'm gonna do a teaspoon and a half, somewhere between 1 and 2 teaspoons. I'm using the granulated stuff because the cane sugar is going to take a little longer to dissolve in the beer, and I don't want that because I really want for this egg to be nice and smooth. So I'm going to mix it up. You're basically beating the egg. Think scrambled eggs with rum and sugar. Are you grossed out yet? Let me see. Is everybody grossed out yet? Free range eggs from Happy Chickens. I hope so. We do have a friend who keeps chickens, and I love it when we get eggs from her. Mrs. Pickles is our favorite. She's got feathers on her head. She's got the best hairdo. All right. So here's the moment of truth. If you're following along on your paper, we're flipping the mixture back and forth between the two ceramic vessels. Ceramic only because this is warm, this beer. So if anybody has done any kind of baking where you have to temper eggs, we're going to do that a little bit here, but not really, because if I pour a little bit of the heated stuff into the, here, let's get a shot into that picture. If I pour a little bit of the heated stuff into this egg mixture, I don't right now have a whisk that I'm constantly beating it, so they would just scramble. So instead, this is where the flip comes in, back and forth, really fast. All right, so let's see how she goes. Here we go. Beer into the egg. Whole mixture into the other pitcher. Whole mixture back. Oh, I totally missed. That was awesome. A little bit more. This is mixing the mixture. Has anybody seen chunks yet? There are no chunks, guys. Seriously. All right, last one. Now, this is the point where if you have a flip iron, this would be a great time to put the flip iron in there, but it's really not necessary. Take a look. It's quite frothy because I was pouring it back and forth. So on my notes, I have that I'm going to put it in this nice Williamsburg mug right here because it's ceramic and it'll hold it. But I do want to give you guys a little look into the glass. There you go. That's flip. And again, because it's 18th century, look at that froth. Here, I'll get a little froth for you right on top. Because it's 18th century, what's the last thing that goes on top? Everybody all together now. And Mrs. Pickles, come to the next happy hour. Ooh, gosh, I hope so. That would be fun. We'll invite Angie and Mrs. Pickles. That's right, nutmeg! Yeah, nutmeg, bam. So a little bit of nutmeg on that one. Oops, I totally missed. Wow. Guys, I completely missed the glass.
So strange.
All right. Spice bag. There we go. All right, guys. Cheers. All right, if you hear horrid coughing and gagging, it's because Andrew's trying to flip for the first time. So I wish that you'd been on camera to do that because he went, ooh, It's a very strange flavor. The best that I can equate it to is the sweet scrambled egg that you sometimes find in sushi dishes or bento boxes. There is a scrambled egg omelet that you can sometimes get on sushi or by itself wrapped in a little seaweed, and it's sweetened. That's the flavor that comes through with the egg. So you get the ale and you get the rum for sure, but when you taste the egg, there's a little sweetness to it that doesn't make it unpleasant. It makes it palatable, I'll say. So I don't mind flip. I kind of like it. It's an acquired taste, but you can really use this because just like you guys reacted, oh my God, raw egg, what the hell? You can talk about this with your audience at a Living History event. Maybe you could even show them if you are at an event where the site coordinators allow you to have some alcohol for a demonstration purpose like this. So No chunks. There are no eggy chunks, right?
Correct.
No chunks. Andrew can testify, no chunks. All right, will you please take my flip jugs away? So, who's heard of flip cup? It's not just for college anymore, guys. It's a real thing. It was called a flip glass, but anyway. I'd rather not put this on my towel, so can I get a paper towel?
Yeah.
We're gonna be really inauthentic for a hot second, and I'm gonna clean up my giant mess that I made with ye old 18th century paper towel. Sorry. All right, great. How's everybody doing? Did we lose you yet? It would be a heck of a demo for guests, wouldn't it? It would be so great. Great. Yeah, for demonstration purposes. I agree. I think that would be an awesome batter for French toast. Well, we're gonna give that a shot maybe tomorrow, and we'll get back to you. We'll let you know. Maybe I can send Kendall an email to send to the whole group with pictures attached to let you know how it went. All right. So there's one more, and I have a couple of minutes. Wait, do I even have a couple of minutes? Okay, I have a couple of minutes. And I wanted to give you guys time for questions or for conversation as well. I know that we're done at 6:30, but I don't mind sort of sitting here and talking to you guys. But the wine of the revolution is one of my favorite things. Port, oh yeah, thank you. Port was a thing in the 18th century for sure, but port was not as popular as Madeira. Madeira comes from the Madeira Islands, just off the coast of Portugal. And I'd really like to do, Kendall, I really want to do an entire class on Madeira. Madeira, more than any other product in the 18th century, in my opinion, is a study in conspicuous consumption. This was not a product like rum, where the market was flooded, people drank what they were given with limited choice. Madeira shows us that the consumer and the provider have a conversation and come up with a different product. It's a whole other conversation. I could spend an hour just on that alone. Madeira in the 18th century is the wine of the revolution. This is what they used to toast the Declaration when it was finally written in its completed form. This is what christened the Constitution, the USS Constitution, the sailing ship, not the document, in 1797. Madeira was popular with this crazy vintner, Thomas Jefferson, before he ever loved French Burgundy, claret, champagne. Before all of those was his love affair with Madeira. So Madeira is wine that's been fortified with brandy. I'm not going to go into why that is. It survived the trip across the Atlantic better. It mellowed out the wine and it made it more drinkable. I've got a whole class about it. Let's get together again. If people weren't drinking Madeira on its own, which they should have been, then they were making drinks out of it. This drink is not a punch bowl drink. This drink is meant to be made in an individual serving. This is sangria before sangria, and you won't find a picture of it. Every drink is made individually in its glass. So, 2 ounces of Madeira. Normally you'll want to wash this out. Here, I'll use the other side and I'll just do 2. I really don't want to destroy this Madeira. Now I brought down the 2 bottles of the Rare Wine Company Madeira because that, in my opinion, is some of the best you can buy. The Rare Wine Company has done their research and they have recreated, this is just 2 of a historic series of about 6 or 7 that they've recreated from 18th century recipes, notes, grape notes, and letters from the 18th century. So you really want the historic wine series. This is the Charleston Cercial. It is a dry amber colored Madeira. This is the New York Malmsey. It is a rich, red, sweet variety. You'll want the sweet variety from Sangaree. So that's what I've got here. This is Sandeman. You can find it just about anywhere. Fine, rich Madeira. It's on the sweeter side. 2 ounces in your cup. And then what? Simple syrup, 1/2 ounce. Okay, listen. The drink's already sweet. So I don't have a 1/2 ounce jigger. I'm gonna T-lar it. That's a little more than a 1/2 ounce. I don't care. Simple syrup, delicious. And then what? Fresh lemon juice. Great. I have one of those here too. How much? 1/2 ounce, so I'll give it a little cut and we'll send it through the juicer, my very historically accurate juicer. So traditionally this would have been drunk, I think I need a little more. Traditionally this would have been drunk in a vessel a little bit smaller than this probably. This is very much your sort of champagne glass kind of drink. And of course, you can change your proportions. So if you want to drink a glass this size of sangria, you most certainly can. But there it is, early sangria. Sweet, lemony, refreshing for summertime. Yeah, give that a try. You're not going to want to give that back either, but I'm going to make you. We love Madeira in this household. We love it straight. Now we love it mixed. We love Madeira in this household. So there's not a Madeira drink that we've met yet that we didn't like. I know that that went by really fast, but yes to Madeira Flat. Oh, look at everybody saying yes to Madeira Flat. What about nutmeg? I know there's no nutmeg in this one. Oh, there is nutmeg. Oh, you guys. Thank you. I should just assume nutmeg, right? I mean, I just said, and you all just heard that nutmeg on everything because you can. Bam, nutmeg. Now we'll try it again.
Hey, guess what we have to do?
Still delicious.
We have to give away the glass onion bottle.
We do. We have to give away the glass bottle. Can you hand me that one right over there? So again, this is one of ours.
I have the I have numbers in a picture for us to draw a number, and then we can say we want it. So that you're gonna get a glass onion bottle just like that.
Just like this one. I'll move our Madeira bottles out of the way.
Are you guys ready? Are you crossing your fingers? All right, hang on a second.
You can put any one of these drinks that we just made in quantity in this bottle.
All right. So I have a number. I have a number in here, and it is tied to a name on a list, and my number is 17.
Okay.
And now I'll go over here. Oh my gosh, Blair Farrar.
Blair, you won it! Yay!
Yay!
That's so cool.
Congratulations.
Congratulations! Yay! Blair, what are you gonna make to put in it?
Oh, the sangaree sounds amazing, she said.
Sangaree! Yes! I love it. Whew! I wasn't sure I was going to get it all in an hour. But listen, just really quick, this is something, there's so much variety. There's so much that can be done. I really could teach a whole class on brewed, distilled, fermented, fortified. So hopefully we can get that going, Kendall. But
oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. But as we dive into these things, it's a way that we can connect with people better because not everybody today drinks. A lot of people do, and that's fine. But even for folks that don't, this is a very social thing, right? Food and drink, eating and gathering, drinking and gathering. These are things that help us connect to one another. And so I really feel like we can use this material from the historic perspective to really draw people in, to get them to understand a little bit about themselves, about each other, and about just how similar we are to people in the 18th century. So I'd really like to encourage you guys to reach out to me so we can talk about this more if you want to. We'll talk about how we can use this information in our interpretations, whether we're able to actually create the drinks and drink them on sites or not, doesn't matter. We can still interpret this. notes. And tea and coffee and chocolate. I got a class about that too. So anyway, I think unless people have questions, thank you all so much for joining me. I hope you found something delicious and tasty to drink this evening.